Hey guys, so I wanted to jump on real quick with I don't know, a message about our journey, my journey, cycles in general, things that we need to know because at the end of the day, we are all going through a cycle, right? And sometimes our cycles overlap one another so that one of us, hopefully both of us, can learn a lesson from that cycle. Um, and it's important to recognize where you are in your cycle, where you are in your journey, so that you're not holding on to baggage longer than what you're supposed to. And it's important to note that somebody's got to figure out that them entertaining you is to teach themselves a lesson. Spirit sent you into my existence because I'm supposed to learn something from you. And if we can learn together and grow, then that relationship can continue, right? However, if I recognize that my behavior has attracted you to me, and I recognize the lesson in that prior to you recognizing your lesson, I have the choice, right, to stay in this situation in which means I am aware of what my cycle is, I'm aware of my lesson, but I'm not ready to face it. Therefore, I'm still stuck in this cycle. Or I have the choice to take my lesson and move forward accordingly. Moving forward accordingly does not necessarily mean you have to have some ugly fallout with your significant other, your best friend, your family member, your boss. It doesn't mean you have to do any of that, okay? Learning your lesson is recognizing it, and if you think you know it heading in there, you've already missed the point. These lessons, the further along on your journey you get, these lessons almost come as a surprise to you. Like, oh my God, this person's a fucking lesson too. Why? Because I didn't learn the first time. And then you sit there and you think back on it, you're like, yeah, I did have a feeling then. I did. My intuition was saying it then, but I kind of pushed through. I thought, maybe I'm doing too much. Whatever the case may be, you let yourself doubt keep you in a situation that you should have left a while ago. And I feel like it's important that you release whatever guilt you have for leaving people behind that are not willing to grow. See, and I did this long tweet about it this morning, and I'm going to try to repost it on Instagram, but it ended up being like 14 different slides, and Instagram only does 10. But the gist of it was me explaining the way that toxicity works, and I have to be honest with you guys, it really does spread like a STD. Okay, um, I think that, well, sorry, I took a break because I'm not doing this live. This is actually a recorded video, and I was thinking, damn, I should have really did this live. Um, and so maybe I'll stop and do it live. And if that doesn't work, then I'll come back and do the video. Okay, hold on. I decided to just do the video. Okay, so let's break down toxic cycles, right? And just hear me out, hear it to the end, because you're gonna see how entertaining somebody who refuses to leave a toxic cycle then spills over into you, causing you to accrue more toxicity no matter how far along you are on your journey. And healers and spiritualists, we got it bad, right? Because we think we're healing, we think we're helping, and really all you're doing is taking on their toxicity because they have no interest in releasing that toxicity. And so all you're doing is providing space. You are providing space. You are holding space for them to pour their excess toxicity in so that they can remain full and still have some in excess to spare, right? Because I've ran out of space here, but I've got you, so I'm gonna tilt some of this out. I'm gonna tilt it out of my cup, so now my cup is empty, your cup is full, and I'm empty to absorb more toxicity from whatever situation I'm in. And that's how that goes. So let me break it down a little further, okay? Person A is in a toxic situation, okay? And they may be aware enough to know that it's toxic and they don't want it because toxic is a fucking keyword that's thrown around so much on the internet, so much on Instagram, so much on Facebook that it's gotten to the point where people think almost everything is toxic, right? So people can be aware that they're in a situation that they shouldn't be in. And that's all that is. It's a situation that you should not be in. However, you are not ready to enact change within that situation. What do I mean by that? To enact change does not necessarily mean you have to, again, abandon that person, be it your significant other, your friend, or your family member. But what it does mean to enact change is not to enact change from them, it is to enact change within yourself. You cannot change somebody's behavior. You can only control the behavior, the energy that you choose to entertain. Okay? I want to make that very clear because when I'm saying all this, it's going to be very easy to say, oh, well, you're pointing a finger, you're pointing. No, at the end of the day, this video is about self accountability. Why? Because you choose the energy that is entertaining to you. You choose the energy that provides this entertainment, right? That's who you choose to entertain. There's no getting around it. So at the end of the day, this really falls back on you, on me. If it's my journey, if it's my awakening, if it's my growth process, I have to realize and be accountable for the fact that I entertained you for as long as I did, knowing that you were doing this. Okay, so enacting change means to enact change within yourself, not someone else. What does that look like? To enact change within yourself is to set boundaries, to say, I can't be a part of this, right? I can't feed this energy. I cannot breed here with you, you know. I am vibing here right now, and to continue to be here with you is only pulling me down, and I cannot do that. I can't allow myself to do that. I can't allow myself to allow you to pull me down because I might as well jump, right? We're so quick to act like somebody's doing something to us, and it's not. People aren't doing anything to us. You do it to yourself because everything is a decision. Everything is a choice that you make. These choices are rooted in your own insecurities and fears and shadows and things that you're not ready to address, okay? It has nothing to do with that person. That person being in your life has nothing to do with them and everything to do with you. Why? Because you drew them into your life for a reason. Okay, so let's just say that. So person is in a toxic situation and they choose not to enact change, not to create boundaries, not to enact change for themselves, for their peace of mind. So what happens is when you stay in shit long enough, it no longer smells like shit. You become immune to it, okay? The scent. It's like if you took a little bit of fucking poison or cocaine, you're building a tolerance, which means you're gonna take more on because it doesn't affect you the way that it did the first time. So you build a tolerance, and eventually you build up enough tolerance so that said poison, said toxicity ends up killing you. It might not be a literal death, but there is a death within you, a death within your spirit. There's something in you. You've heard people say that before, like, I'm not who I used to be, right? Um, but they usually say, you did this to me. No, you did it to yourself, right? So that person stays and eventually becomes consumed with the toxicity. When that person becomes consumed with the toxicity, generally two things happen. One, the first thing they do is start to isolate themselves, not necessarily from the world, but from the people who are closest to them. And the second thing that they tend to do is, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. The second thing that they tend to do is become overtly sensitive to content, right? Because they project. They isolate and they project. When they isolate, like I said, they don't necessarily isolate themselves from the world, but they will isolate themselves from the people who are closest to them. Why? Because those people tend to tell them a truth that they might not want to hear, or they may isolate them because the persons closest to them aren't feeding the energy that they need. And the energy that they're thriving on at this moment is lower level energy. That's what toxicity is, right? It's lower level energy. So you may have somebody who is not feeding that need. And so then they pull back, they isolate. Their fear of judgment, right? Because I think that if we're being totally honest with ourselves, if we're doing something that we feel like we shouldn't be doing, we're already low key putting labels on something. My job is not to judge you. I try not to judge myself. Okay? So if I'm not going to judge myself, I damn sure don't have the time to judge you. These are your fears. Judgment is a lower level energy. Okay? The truth of the matter is, the people closest to you, maybe they are judging you, but maybe they're not. Maybe they just want you to do better, but you think that they're judging you, and so you pull away. You see, this is how the toxicity starts to take over in different aspects of your life. There's anger that breeds there. There's fear and there's judgment. And so maybe they move away from you but start hanging out or giving more energy to people who may function on a lower level as well. And those people might not be in the same exact cycle, right? Because we are all in cycles. Remember, I said that in the beginning of the video. We are all in cycles. But they will start to gravitate towards people who share similar cycles, okay? Why? Because sometimes people want to hear that everything's going to be okay, or that, do you for as long as it takes you to do you, kind of a thing. Whatever. I don't know what people want to hear. It obviously isn't whatever it is you have to say. And so they will, like attracts like, and so they will gravitate in that direction. They will gravitate to the energy that's feeding the energy that they need, whether it be good for them or not. So again, they won't isolate from the world. They may, but they won't isolate necessarily from the world. They'll isolate from the people closest to them. You see this, a really good example that you see this in is abusive relationships, where people feel like they were isolated from their families. The abuser doesn't want the person near their families because, they don't want their families to ask questions that they may not be ready to answer, So they end up, that's a good example. They end up isolating away from their families. Not necessarily the world, they're still interactive, but the people who do care very much about them and their well-being, they will pull away from. So that moves into projection and overtly sensitive to content. Everything from this point on, because they're in a place of projection, because they're in a place where they think of themselves in a certain way, so they automatically assume other people are going to think of them that way, they will project that out. And what that looks like is generally them taking offense to something that you may post or say that has nothing to do with them at all. And it's hard in that situation because you want to be understanding for them and you want to be there for them, but now it's stressing you out, right? So you have to think twice. Like, you see something and maybe what you see relates to where you're at in your journey, but whatever it is triggers something within them and their journey, and that upsets them because instead of thinking, maybe this person is on their own journey and this is relating to what they're going through, they're going to automatically, because they're in a lower level energy, almost take a narcissistic route and think it has to be about them. Let me let you guys in on a little secret. If I say, release the things that are no longer serving you, that means something different to every person, including myself. You may take it as, release this job because it's not serving me anymore. It's not a good environment. He may take it as, release this, my girlfriend, because it's not a good environment for me. You may take it as, release, stop trying to hold on to living in this neighborhood because, it's not working anymore. You keep running into roadblocks. If you keep running into roadblocks on something, it means it's not working for you. Period. So if you see something like that, if this person sees something like that, they're going to automatically think you're talking about them. And that, again, will trigger most likely anger, because though they are aware that they are in a toxic situation, there's not enough self-awareness to realize that the anger that they're feeling is something that they've kind of brewed on their own. You created this scenario on your own. You know what I'm saying? But there's a deniable plausibility type of a thing there, where because they don't see past their own toxic shades, I guess, because they don't see past their own situation and what they're going through, they're going to not even realize that you may be going through your own situation and your own awareness. You get what I'm saying? So now here you are having to think before you speak, regardless of what you're talking about. You could be talking about yourself, but you have to think before you speak to make sure that you don't offend this person. You look at something, you be like, oh my God, that calls to my soul. I want to repost it, but I don't want so and so to think that I'm talking about them. It's a crazy cycle. And so with that, now you are becoming resentful and angry because um, you're starting to feel restricted. So this is how it happens. You're starting to feel restricted, and that gives you anger and resentment. And what is anger and resentment? It's lower level energy. So did you see how that toxicity has transferred now onto you? It's not on the same level, right? Because this toxic situation has to do with a lover's quarrel, and your toxic situation has to do with your cycle, or your, what do I want to say? Your cycle of releasing things that don't serve you, right? So they're two different cycles, but because you weren't aware enough that you were feeding into or enabling this person's toxicity, you held space for this person's toxicity. You held space for it. It's now falling into you. And you're taking on all these energies that you really don't want to take on. You're taking on all these energies, and now you feel like shit again. Now you're irritable. Now you're snapping. Now you're in a place where it's like, why the fuck am I feeling this way? It's because you've allowed other people's toxicity to pour onto you. And it's really that simple. It spreads like an STD, okay? So with all that being said, how do we prevent that from happening? Well, the first thing you need to do is be aware when it happens. You will notice the red flags, but depending on where you're at in your journey, because sometimes we get to this place where it's like, oh, I want to make sure that it's not me, right? Because we did some healing, we realized we've had certain behaviors, and so now we are all the way on the opposite end of where we used to be. Well, maybe we're too understanding, and you have to be balanced. Any type of imbalance, too much of anything is not good. Too much of anything is toxic, all right? Even being too understanding. So we went from having zero tolerance to having too much tolerance. And so we have open space and held it for their energy to spill over. So what we do, what does it look like when we're trying to repair that? One is becoming aware that you held that space. And two is deciding that you no longer want to hold that space. That doesn't mean end a relationship or a friendship. You'll notice that if you just continue to work on your growth, the people and the things that are not meant for you will automatically fall off. Be aware that your growth is always going to trigger somebody who is not growing. Your growth and your self-awareness is always going to be a trigger to somebody that lacks that. With that being said, that means you have to move forward in the most authentic form of yourself. And if they get offended by what you have to say or what you're doing, as long as you're not like, I don't think that you should be out here sending like subliminals and shit like that, right? Because then, yeah, you are feeding into their negative energy. But if you're just doing you because it relates to you and it feels good and you're not even thinking about that person, you need to continue to do that. You need to lose the concept of, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this in case so-and-so gets offended. That's where the space is being held. Pull back from that and continue to move you. So you're not holding space for their projected fears. That's the space you need to release. Don't hold space for their projected fears. Continue to move forward doing you and doing what you need to do. Working on you. Again, you can never change somebody else's experience, somebody else's journey, somebody else's feelings. You can't even be responsible for them. You can only be responsible for you, your truth, and how you move forward on your journey. You get what I'm saying? You have to understand why you may have attracted something that you did not want to attract. Sorry, somebody's calling in the middle of the video. So stop holding space for that shit. Genuinely be your most authentic self. And you're going to lose people along the way. And that is what it is. But again, it goes back to like attracts like. If they fall off, that means they're not on the same vibrational frequency you are. And do you really want to stay here and continue to try to hold space when they're not trying to release or not hold the space? You get what I'm saying? Wanting to do something and actually doing something is two different things. And so you have to want to not hold space. You have to want to be able to continue to move forward in love, light, positivity, and self-love first and foremost. You always have to put your healing first. It's no different from being a caretaker of any kind. You can't provide for others if you can't provide for yourself. And that's just the bottom line. You can't do it well. You're not going to be happy with what you're doing. Okay? So I say all this to say at the end of the day, it's about accountability and it's about learning your lesson. And if you realize before the other person that what your lesson is from this relationship and you take it and you move forward accordingly, either they're going to quickly realize what their lesson is because they will feel the energy shift between you, or they'll decide that and I'm sorry, they'll feel the energy shift and they'll want to continue to move towards that light. They'll want to continue to move towards the higher vibrational frequency, or they will decide you're against them for whatever reason and decide to stay here because that's where it's comfortable and that's where they think they're feeling good. And if that's the case, all you can do is let them do that. Again, it doesn't, you don't have to be like, you know what, don't ever talk to me again if you're going to continue to do this. That's not what you have to do. You don't have to do that at all. All you have to do is continue to vibe and continue to do you. The more you move forward authentically and don't feed that, if you feed into it where it's like, you have to know I wasn't talking about you. You know, I'm gonna post this, but just so you know, it's not about you. Or I'm not gonna post this because so and so doesn't feel. The more you do that, the more you block your blessings. Spirit is sending you messages, and those messages that they send you, you share because it hits something with you and you feel like other people can grow from that. Other people can see something from that. So Spirit is trying to pull you up. Spirit is trying to give you something. This is your path. So when you stop taking these messages, when you stop sharing them because you're trying to do this instead of you're not grabbing your own blessing, that's where you need to be aware. Okay. um so I hope you guys got something out of this, um because at the end of the day, anything you want is going to start within you. Everything that you're ever searching for, by the time you make it back around that circle, you're going to realize you already had it. Okay. Um, so that's all for my spiel. Like, comment, subscribe, share this video, do what you want to do. Give me your thoughts. Let me know what you think. And yeah, let's dialogue. Let's go from there. All right. Have a good one, guys.